Thanks for jumping back into the cryptoverse. Today, we're going to talk about Monero and the potential reaccumulation range that we talked about a few weeks ago. And we're just going to provide an update on today during this pretty critical time within the cryptocurrency asset class. So if you guys like the content, please go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Give the video a thumbs up. Also, please check out the Telegram channel, which you can find a link to in the description below. Let's go ahead and jump in. So if you guys remember, we talked about this potential reaccumulation range of Monero against Bitcoin a few weeks ago. And since then, the valuation of Monero against Bitcoin has continued to slowly and methodically move up week over week. Yes, there's some red weeks, but for the most part, it has continued to move up. Now, we are at the top of what I would consider our potential reaccumulation band. Okay, we even had a wick right here up to the 100-week moving average. So if we remove this, you can see we had a wick of the Monero Bitcoin valuation up to the 100-week moving average of the Monero Bitcoin valuation. Now the question, right, is are we going to see something like this where we break back out, right, and head back up to this region, right? This is the region that I think we would probably be targeting if we were to break out of it. So let me go ahead and draw that box on here so we can try to better visualize where that would be. So it would be in this region right here, and this is where I would anticipate a potential breakout too if we're able to get out of this. Now, the question, of course, that everyone wants to know, right, is are we going to do this, or are we more likely to come back down and continue this, reaccumulation range? Okay, so the first thing I would say is that it all hinges on Bitcoin holding the 20-week moving average. This is my opinion. I think that if Bitcoin is able to hold the 20-week moving average as support, then Monero will continue to break out against Bitcoin over the next 6 months or so, 6 to 12 months, probably sooner rather than later. But I would say 6 to 12 months, I think there'll be a continued breakout of Monero against Bitcoin. And you might even see the valuation of Monero against Bitcoin from where it currently is, go up 50%. Okay. Now, the question, right, is will Bitcoin hold the 20-week moving average? Now, one of the things we know, right, if we talk about where Bitcoin is, the 20-week moving average, as we have previously showed, is a very critical region, right? If we switch over to the weekly time frame, so let's switch over to the weekly, and you can see we have our let me switch this back over to 20 weeks. So we have our 20-week moving average, which, by the way, if you're new to the channel, was our historic support in a bull market. Okay, you can see we always had corrections back down to the 20-week moving average, right? That ranged between 20 to 40%. Okay, every single one of them came back down to the 20-week moving average. Okay, the last one came back down and it went below it, right? We had a candle close below it, and it was actually 50%, right? And the 50% drop below the 20-week moving average, right? It was actually more than that. It was like 60%. But this is what led to the bear market, right? Once the 20-week broke, held it as resistance, it was the bad news bears from then on out. Now, again, with Bitcoin, we saw this explosive breakout, and from there, we saw a 20% correction back to the 20-week moving average, right? And in present day, we saw a similar thing, right? We saw a breakout and then a 20% correction back to the 20-week moving average, right? If you look at, basically from the top here to the 20-week, it was a 20% correction. Now, the thing is I don't think we're going to have our answer tomorrow, right? Whether Bitcoin's going to hold the 20-week. We might, of course, if it goes below it, but even then it could still theoretically be a wick, right? We don't care about wicks below. All I care about are the weekly candles. We want weekly candles to close above it. Even in the last cycle, we did sometimes have wicks that went below the 20-week, right? I mean, here's the perfect example of one. Here was a wick that went, 12% below the 20-week moving average, but it was nothing more than a wick, and it was very short-lived. Okay, so we don't care about wicks. What we care about are the weekly candles holding the 20-week. And the first successful test of the 20-week in the last cycle, you can see lasted, if we take a measured move, it lasted approximately 15 to 16 weeks, okay? And note that the first test of the 20-week did not hold. And we've already had 2 tests of the 20-week in this cycle that did not hold, right? Here's one and here's another. And both times when we broke them, this one went directly to the 100-week, and then this one went to the 200-week with a wick to the 300-week. So this is a very critical region. If we fall below it, altcoins tend to bleed against Bitcoin. And if we fall below it, I would anticipate Monero would likely bleed against USD, but it would bleed heavier against Bitcoin, right? Well, not necessarily more than it would, not in terms of percentage-wise. I'm not saying that the percent would be more against Bitcoin than USD. What I'm saying is Bitcoin would bleed, Monero would bleed, but Monero would bleed more than Bitcoin, causing the Monero Bitcoin valuation to also decrease. But on the other hand, what if we hold it, right? What if Bitcoin holds the 20-week moving average as support? Well, we can look at some similarities, right, between where we currently are and the last cycle, as we spoke about in the last video. Now, one of the things you kind of recognize is this same kind of general pattern, right? This, we came up, we came back down, kind of a double bottom, came back up. We kind of had one more last correction, and then we were off to the races, right? So in the same manner, if we were to draw kind of a rectangle at our bottom here, and then also maybe even extend it up to show this is where the accumulation range was, there are some similarities, right, between this move here and then where we currently are. If we were to carry it out exactly, if we were to perform exactly how we are the same qualitative trend, we might actually expect a correction of Monero against Bitcoin. I'm not saying that has to happen. I'm just saying if it were to play out exactly the same way, but we know things don't always play out exactly the same way. So the question, right, is, will this happen? And why do we think that Monero has this potential to break out against Bitcoin? Because so far, it hasn't really done much of anything, right? I mean, yeah, it's gone up, maybe 25% against Bitcoin, but so what, right? I mean, there's other coins that have performed much better. Well, if you go back, right, to the last cycle, and we showed this in the last video, but I just want to remind you, if you go back to the last cycle, remember Bitcoin got to its prior all-time high it held the 20-week as support in the first quarter of 2016. Okay, now in the first quarter of 2016, this is when Ethereum started pumping against Bitcoin, right? This is when Ethereum really made its move against Bitcoin. However, in the first quarter of 2016, if you look at what Monero did, it didn't really do a whole lot, right? I mean, it moved up somewhat, but this was still within, I think, the potential reaccumulation range, which is where we currently are, right? This is a nice move up during that time. This move right here was when Bitcoin was holding the 20-week moving average as support, and when it continued to hold it as support, Monero actually bled back down. You can see if we were to take a measured move, it bled back down against Bitcoin by 57%. So I don't know if this move is going to come, but regardless, even if it does come, it probably, first of all, let's say if this move comes, it could happen, right? If Bitcoin either doesn't hold the 20-week, if it doesn't hold the 20-week, then certainly, almost assuredly, we're going to see a big correction. If Bitcoin moves up quickly, we could also see a correction. So if Bitcoin were to say all of a sudden get kind of crazy and then just blast off back to like 14K or something, this would also probably cause a bleed of Monero against Bitcoin, which could also, theoretically lead to a decrease in the valuation of Monero against Bitcoin if Monero can't quite keep up, or if the entire altcoin market just kind of sits idly by and watches what happens. It doesn't mean that Monero would lose USD value per se, but it might just not keep up with Bitcoin. So those are the two major, kind of things that we could see happening that would cause the Monero Bitcoin valuation to bleed. If, on the other hand, Bitcoin, it holds the 20-week moving average and just kind of slowly moves back up, then I do think that the Monero trend against Bitcoin will continue and that we'll see it break out. Now, remember, in June of 2016, let me go ahead and pull up the Ethereum Bitcoin chart, okay? So we're going to pull up Ethereum Bitcoin so we can make a quick comparison. So in In January of 2016, this is when Ethereum pumped heavily against Bitcoin, right? So we see this move right here. It was a 1,600 to 1,700% move. In June, Bitcoin or Ethereum, starting from June until the first quarter of the next year, Ethereum lost 60% against Bitcoin. On the other hand, between June and the first quarter of the next year, if we go to say, let's go from say June to the first quarter of the next year. So we're going to go all the way over to January. Monero gained approximately 600% against Bitcoin. So Ethereum lost 60%. Monero gained 600% during this time. So the key thing to consider here is that Monero has more delayed response, right? I mean, we know that history doesn't always repeat itself, that past performance doesn't really indicate anything about future performance, but the purpose of this channel is to at least use historical information to inform our future decisions. That way we're not just kind of blindly running through the market, but we're actually saying, okay, we saw this happen last time, let's try to use this information to our advantage. And I think it's worked out really well so far. There's a lot of coins we say it's better to wait until Bitcoin gets to the prior all-time high. There's some that we say, it's good if Bitcoin's holding the 20-week. With Monero, my main point has been, the reason I didn't talk about it for so long was because I just didn't feel like we were at that part of the cycle. But if Bitcoin holds the 20-week moving average and does not get overly bearish or does not get overly bullish, like, too bullish too quickly, then I do think there's a good chance that we're going to see a breakout of Monero against Bitcoin over the next 6 to 12 months. Okay, and the thing to remember, right, is if you follow this channel, I don't think that we're going to see a boom, a paradigm shift in the price of Bitcoin in 2021. We talk about lengthening cycles all the time, and the idea that each cycle, right, is going to take longer than the last one, but also we're going to see decreased volatility, right? So I don't anticipate us seeing a 600% move from Monero to say Bitcoin. You can see from the peak, it was actually 1,300%. So it's pretty similar to what Ethereum did against Bitcoin a few months before. But I could see, a fraction of this, right? Maybe a few 100% move against Bitcoin, maybe just 50%, right? But what we're looking for is a move of Monero against Bitcoin over the next 6 to 12 months if Bitcoin holds the 20-week moving average, okay? If it doesn't, then I would say we just kick the can down the road and we look out for this potential opportunity whenever it comes up again. So remember, if you're unfamiliar with the channel, we talk about a lot, the Bitcoin valuation getting back to its prior all-time high in about 16 months, okay? Somewhere in that time frame, so into 2021, early 2022, recognizing that we got to the prior all-time high within our regression band, extending it out from here to here, puts us probably first quarter of 2022 before we realistically have a chance of having a sustainable $20,000 Bitcoin. It is during this time, this slow methodical move up to the prior all-time high, that I think, if this does happen, that I think Monero could be the catalyst that Monero needs to move up against Bitcoin. Again, I wouldn't be too shocked if there's a short-term pullback. The market is pretty testy right now, right? But at the same time, we recognize there is a lot of potential upside if Bitcoin does hold the 20-week and we have any remnant of the success that we saw during the last cycle during this one. So I hope this video has been informative. I mean, there is also the Monero USD chart, but I find things more interesting to really talk about in lieu of Bitcoin, because ultimately speaking, Bitcoin is the market mover, and I think that's what we ultimately need to respect. So if you guys like the content, please subscribe to the channel, give the video a thumbs up. Remember, we do have the premium list, so check it out at intothecryptoverse.com if you guys like this kind of content. We have weekly premium videos, weekly reports, the private Telegram alerts channel, the private Telegram chat room, and the risk dashboard, which, by the way, we have the Monero risk level up, and which is what I use to trade different cryptocurrencies. So check it out. The prices are going to go up on the 28th of September, so you have 5 days, 4 to 5 days, depending on your time zone, to sign up if you want to get grandfathered in at the lower prices. Make sure you check out the Telegram channel. Please subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Thanks. Bye.